What's going on, guys? My name is Tarik Samuel, and today what we're going to be focusing on is our third set of PMP questions. And do me a favor, if you've gone through the first two videos, go ahead and like and subscribe down below. That's going to help us. We can't do anything without you guys. I want to make sure that you guys are getting the most out of this, and in order for me to do that, I need to hear some comments. I need to hear some concerns. I need to hear, hey, I want to be talking about this. Like, what about this type of question? Give suggestions down below, and we'll be able to help you guys out and get to you as soon as possible. And maybe it might be in the next video, right? Because it's something that everybody is having problems with. So without further ado, I don't want to waste any more of your time. We're going to get into question 9, 1 through 8. We're on the first two videos. If you haven't seen it yet, go and look at the first two videos and then catch up with us here after that. But question 9, without further ado, let's get into it. So you're working on a project where senior users have been testing the product as parts are released. They have found some missing requirements and defects. Their manager is worried that the project won't deliver a product that is fit for purpose without defects and within the time frame needed. What will you do next? Right? And the key question is always, what will you do next? Right? Not what could you do down the road? No, what is the next best option? So without further ado, let's get into the answer choices. Is it A, perform some of the testing yourself to ensure a quality product? Now the team has quality measures and standards that they have set before they went and kind of went into the execution phase. Should have planned that out. You testing it yourself is not going to solve the problem at hand, which is they have defects with the quality already, right? With their product already, they have defects according to the standards that they have already set. They also are missing requirements when it comes to that product. So that's not solving the problem at hand. B, help every team member focus on quality from correct acceptance criteria to a developed and tested product. So that's important, right? If you go back and you kind of change your correct acceptance criteria, right? It's going to help you throughout the process early on establish some standards that you want to adhere to that are going to help mitigate some of that quality problems down the line, right? And so as you start to shrink your correct acceptance criteria, right? You start to find what works and what doesn't. You start to kind of hone in on it. You'll be able to have a better product. So I like B. I like B. C, limit testing until the very end of the project so you can do it all in one go when the project is completely ready. So no, right? And we talk about this idea of quality assurance. What you want to do is continuously test as you're building the product so that you don't have any major defects at the end, which is what this seems like they have been running into, is the major defects. D, increase the testing on your project and add more testing resources so no defect goes unnoticed. Now, that's not a bad option as well, right? Increasing the testing on your project is going to help you, right? But if you're missing the requirements, and I think that's where B and D differ, right? They're both good answers, but B helps you focus on making sure that you ensure the requirements are met, right? By changing the acceptance criteria. Whereas D just focuses on testing. And if you just focus on testing right now, yes, you would have a better product, but you still wouldn't solve for all the missing requirements. So I'm going to go with B. And the answer is B. Quality focuses on meeting acceptance criteria for deliverables and satisfying stakeholders' expectations on product requirements. Quality is everyone's responsibility in an adaptive agile project. And this is in PMP Guide 7th edition, 2021, page 47 through 49. Build quality in processes and deliverables, right? You want to build that quality. That's where quality assurance comes from. Being able to build it into those processes and deliverables, right? The processes specifically. So without further ado, we answered that first question correctly. Good job. We're going to move into question 10. So question 10. And by the way, I haven't seen any of these questions or answers, right? This is the first time I'm seeing them and I'm going through them with you. So this just shows you that once you get the PMI mindset, you'll be able to apply it to every single question and get almost every single question right? You go into the PMP understanding how to solve and how to think, then you'll be better off, right? And so that's the goal. So pick up on some of the things that I'm talking about here and how I'm thinking through these questions. But 10, you're working through the risk assessment with your team who are having trouble coming up with ideas for risks. You decide to give them some guidance on tips on types of complexity that might affect your new product. What will you do next? And it's always next, right? Not what will you do after you've tried this, that, and that. What will you do next, right? And so coming up with ideas for risks is I mean, if you're having trouble with that, that's a big problem, right? Because you want to plan as much as you can to mitigate risk in the future. And so if you're having problems with that, then maybe you may need to try some creative ways, but we'll see what they have for the answer choices here. A, ask them to brainstorm qualitative and quantitative risks. Not really. I mean, they're having trouble with it. I mean, I don't think that helps them solve the problem of having trouble coming up with risks. Ask them to perform the 5 whys and the Ishikawa analysis. Maybe. I don't really like that answer, but let's see what C and D have. C, ask them to brainstorm around possible unwanted human behavior, system behavior, ambiguity, and technical innovation impacts. I like that idea because what it does is it's not just, okay, what are some risks? It points you in directions for you to evaluate risk, right? So what could happen with human behavior in this realm of the project, right? What do we not want to happen with our system behavior? I like that because it gives specifics for them to focus on. So C is a good answer in my mind so far. D, ask them to perform a retrospective to discover what isn't working well and what still puzzles us. So you're in the risk, you're trying to find out what risks would affect your project. You haven't gone and executed anything yet. So performing a retrospective, which is done at the end of the project, is not something that you would do right now to solve the problem. It may be something that you would do after you've already completed the project and you want to fix the problems that you had within the project so that you don't have them in the future. But this isn't something that you would do right now. So I'm going to go with C because I think C focuses their mind and energy into specific areas that they can start to evaluate and determine what risks may lie within those areas. So we're gonna go with C, and it's C. Complexity is often the result of human behavior, system interactions, technical innovation, uncertainty, and ambiguity. Complexity can be introduced by events or conditions that affect values, scope, stakeholders, and risk, and more. This is in PMP Guide 6th edition, 2021, page 50, 51, Navigating Complexity. And so with that, you could see where the right answer was, right? They were lost in terms of finding the risk, and this pointed them into specific areas to look for it, right? And so that's what you got to do as a project manager, is you have to evaluate where your team is in order to be able to find a solution and get them to where they need to be going. But let's go to question 11. Congratulations on question 10. So question 11, you're working on a project where you discover a certain negative risk with the potential impact of $2 million. You meet with your project stakeholders who determine that this is within their risk appetite, provided you meet a risk threshold of 10%. What will you do next? Is it A, note the acceptable risk level as a threat of $200,000. B, note the acceptable risk level as a threat of $1.8 million to $2.2 million, 10% variance. Is it C, note the impact outside the risk acceptable, note the impact as outside the acceptable risk level of $2 million, or D, note the impact as an opportunity of $200,000. So definitely not D or C. It's between A and B, right? Noting the acceptable risk as a threat of $200,000, 10%, or note the acceptable risk level as a threat of 1.8 million to 2.2 million, 10% variance, right? And so what I see is that as you evaluate this question, they're saying provided you meet a risk threshold of 10%, right? So the impact of $2 million, they're okay with, right, is what they're saying. They're okay with it as long as it falls within a 10% threshold, is how I read it and how I dissect it. And so I would go with answer B. Another way to dissect it, if you weren't keen on how to read this question, would be they're saying that they can meet the risk at up to $200,000. And that would lean towards A, but that's not what they're saying here. They're saying here, we're okay with $2 million that meets our appetite as long as it doesn't go over a 10% threshold. And so we're gonna go with it. And the answer is B, right? Risk appetite describes the level of uncertainty or risk that your stakeholders are willing to accept. Risk threshold is the measure of the acceptable variation around an objective that reflects the risk appetite. In this scenario, excuse me, 10% variation around $2 million is 1.8 million to 2.2 million. PMP Guide, 7th edition, 2021, page 54 in risk, right? And so you have to look at how the question is asking, or what the question is asking, and evaluate it correctly, right? Knowing this, and I genuinely didn't remember risk threshold versus risk threshold, risk appetite, all that stuff. It's been a while. But because I have the PMI mindset, because I understand what the question is asking and I know how to read it, you can start to dissect what the correct answer is. So even somebody that hasn't took the exam in a while, somebody who hasn't looked at PMP information until I started doing this series, or PMP questions, and hasn't been answering them for a while, can jump back into it because you understand the mindset, you understand the structure, you understand how you need to think. So look at how we're evaluating these questions and take note. And move into our final question, which is question 12. Yep, question 12, my bad. A risk has been raised in your project around insufficient building materials. One risk response assigned to the functional manager suggests to use a brand new material which has not been fully tested in a building project. Half of your stakeholder group are happy with this risk response, but the other half are not and refuse to sign off on it. What will you do next? Right? And so you're in a situation where you have half of your stakeholders agree that this is a acceptable risk mitigation technique, and the other, or risk mitigation solution, and the others say, no, this is not good. This is untested, and we're not willing to sign off on it. So how do you get them on the same page? A, suggest a quantitative risk approach to give a more accurate financial impact. I don't really like that answer. The question is because the material hasn't been tested, right? And so that a quantitative risk approach is not necessarily gonna solve that problem. B, suggest they proceed with the proposed risk response and ensure it is followed through. That's not gonna solve the problem of the split group. C, suggest a different risk owner as an executive may have more power to respond to the risk. That's still not gonna solve the problem of the split group. You're just trying to push it off onto somebody else. And then D, suggest a different risk response as they should be timely, cost-effective, realistic, and agreed to by relevant stakeholders. And I think D is the best answer here. If you can suggest something different that they all can agree on, it'd be better to move the project forward, right? A would maybe work if they were worried about the financial aspect of it, which is, I mean, it all kind of boils down to finances, but I think that that's not specifically what the question is asking for. And so when you look at this, you want to solve the division between the group. I think D offers the best ability to do that. So we're going to go with D. And the answer is D. This question refers to risk responses. Risk responses should be appropriate and timely to the significance of the risk, cost-effective, realistic within the project context, and agreed to by relevant stakeholders and owned by a responsible person. So D is the best answer, right? This is in PMBOK Guide, 7th edition, 2021, page 54, risk, right? And so we got to that conclusion just based off of how the question was asking, what the question was asking. I keep saying how the question was asking, but it's also how it's asking its question, right? What is it looking for? It's not looking for a quantitative answer. It's not looking to address that. It's looking to address this to split decision between the stakeholder group and the division between the stakeholder group. So you want to be able to have them come to a consensus and agreed upon risk mitigation solution. So D just seemed like the obvious choice because it allowed for them to do that. So without further ado, that is the conclusion of today's PMP question extraordinaire. No, I'm sorry. PMP questions. And if you have any questions, go ahead and comment down below. I'll get to you. But if you like this type of content and you want more of it, continue to like, continue to subscribe. Go ahead and share it in the Reddit groups. You know, if you think this helped you out, I want to get this to as many people as possible because I knew how it felt to go through my PMP journey and trying to learn how to think about these questions. And so we want to help as many people as we can. And so continue to share this information and stay tuned for the next video because I'm going to offer some more explanations on how to answer questions and continue to aid you in your PMP journey. Without further ado, it's your boy Tarik Samuel. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you at the next video.